I didn't realize I was only had a half an hour, so I cut last night a good hour presentation down to half an hour. I'm going to ask you guys to read certain things yourself. I'm not going to try to say them for you. So I'm going to blast through this fairly quickly.
Hey, Randy, don't be afraid of the mic.
Oh, the microphone. I'm going to make it into a portable mic here. Okay. We've had a lot of changes over the course of my beekeeping career, which started near the beginning of this slideshow here. And what you can see, each time we get new pathogens or parasites coming in here, we have more and more problems with our bees. It's been a constant learning curve, especially this area right here. We got a wave of new pathogens coming and parasites coming into our colonies that we didn't have for many, many years. There's a remote. Just, oh, fantastic. Right, so there wasn't a remote. Oh man, and I could even come down here and put my water right here. Oh, now I work much better. Okay, and what happened is, it all came together and suddenly we got this rise in almond pollination rents because it became a whole lot harder to keep bees alive. It's not done. We still got these three knocking on our doors. Any one of these which could change beekeeping completely in the United States. Now, the way we've dealt with the parasitic mites is with synthetic miticides largely. Starting with tracheomite, people started using amitraz. Eric published a paper showing that they were wasting their time with amitraz on the tracheomite. But shortly after that, we got varroa mite. And the beekeepers kind of split two ways. Most of us went with fluvalate, and some continued to stick with amitraz. Some have used amitraz for a very, very long time. Fluvalate died pretty quickly. After about 6 years, there was showed a lot of resistance, the mites had resistance, and then pretty much faded off. Some beekeepers gave it up early, some just kept ramping the doses up to incredible doses until after about 15 years they gave it up. Then they switched to Coumaphos. Coumaphos, an other absolute miracle. You take this nerve gas smelling stuff out of a package, you stick it in your hive, and the mites just disappear. 3 years later, it didn't work either. At that point in time, 2002, I said, man, I'm stepping off this treadmill, and we haven't used a synthetic miticide since then. In the meantime, right around here, for a short while, there were no legal treatments that worked in the United States. And what saved our industry was stepping to tactic, an off-label form of amitraz, and this has been the mainstay of our industry since then. The problem is that if I look around the world, any place there's a green explosion here is where we're seeing resistance to amitraz, either complete failure of it as a miticide, or we're seeing resistance happening. So the clock is ticking on amitraz. Just at the California Queen Breeders meeting, and when beekeepers first started using tactic, once a year would be enough for a treatment. Now they're up to 5-6 times a year and wondering what's going to happen. When a biologist sees that's happening, he says, well, you better start preparing here. The problem is there aren't many other products in the pipeline being developed right now to take the place of amitraz. So my question is, are we going to start a new era of mite management, where people are going to have to adapt? Now, I'm not saying it's going to happen. There are some countries where amitraz is still working after 30 years. So it says hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. And the question I ask, have you got your plan B figured out? A couple of years ago, 3 years ago, during the summer when tactic was unavailable for a while, a lot of beekeepers did not have a plan B at hand. They had never practiced, and they didn't treat at all, and they lost just tens of thousands of colonies. So what I'm not saying to change right now what you're doing, but be ready for a change. And I'll let you read that quote. I love that quote. Okay, so there are some options, and I'm just going to go over them. First, you can learn how to use the legal one, ABUC bar strips. The advantages are, yes, it's legal, and the other big advantage is it's time release. You don't have to keep going back and putting it in. The disadvantages are it's pretty dang expensive. It can take up to 4 strips for a strong colony. Those beekeepers are trying to save money by just putting in 1 or 2 strips. They're being disappointed by this. It's not going to get the quick knockdown that you're used to if you're using tactic. And if you have resistant mites, it's not going to be as effective as you hope. The time release strips are not designed for a quick knockdown. And what every beekeeper loves to see is a whole lot of dead mites. That's actually not the best way to use amitraz. It's better to use it as a disruptor of behavior of the mites, just so they don't reproduce as well. And it does that. It doesn't have to kill them. It only has to just make it so that they are unable to get into the brood cells and reproduce properly. So it takes several weeks. Some data out of Europe, recent data, shows that you get a pretty big drop of mites for the first 3 weeks, but you really need to do the full 8-week treatment to get really high efficacy with Amatraz strips. So understand mite buildup. To understand mite buildup, model it. If you model it, there's only 4 real factors that are involved: your starting mite level, the reproductive success rate, your R value, your efficacy of treatments, and your immigration of mites from outside. So what I did is I like to work on these on modeling here. Let's see, I need to escape that. Well, let me open up this. And I've developed a few different models. Let's see, let's open this one right here. This one right here is my latest one I'm using. So what you can do is you can go into a colony right here, and I calculate what the, I figure out from literature what the standard rate, the intrinsic rate of reproduction. I'm sorry, I'm trying to speed up here. I'm blowing it. Anyway, what this does right here, if you look up there, this is your, if we start off, I'm going to start off with just 100 mites in this colony. So just because all the rest of the graphs, except for one, will be just 100 mites. And you start off your framed bees up here, and it plots out your bee population. It plots out your mite population. So by the end of the season, if you start with 100 mites, you have moderate immigration. You're going to wind up 8,000 plus mites here. This would be your alcohol wash number of mites per 100 bees. And what you can do is by putting in a treatment efficacy. So say 90% efficacy treatment there, hit enter, and it calculates out what your mite level will be after that. This allows you to do tons of experimentation without killing a whole bunch of hives. In one night, you can try every different kind of mite control strategy you want, see what will actually work. So you're going to be seeing a bunch of graphs of this. Oops. Back to slideshow from current slide. Okay, so this is me modeling out here. And going into the winter with more than 1,000 mites is typically death for a colony. So we got 8,400 right here. Okay, so one option to do is to apply your miticides more frequently. So a typical tactic application where you use like a grease patty or something that extends the release of the Amatraz, or going in each week, 2 weeks in a row, putting in treatments. What it works out to be is something like about a 95% efficacy of the phoretic mites. These are just the phoretic mites. This would be mites in the brood, which it doesn't affect. And you can see that if you did 2 good treatments of tactic at high efficacy, you're going to wind up with a very low mite level by the end of the season. Now, to reduce that efficacy from 95% to 70% and run it the same way, now instead of only having 600 mites at the end of the season, you got 1,400 mites at the end of the season. It just takes a little bit of diminution of the efficacy to make a huge difference at the end of the year. So what you can do, put in additional treatment. Okay? Say I did the 3 times a year. I'm back down to a pretty low level, so that would work. The problem with that is that the more often you use the same treatment, or the higher the dose you use, the more you're breeding for resistant mites. You're now into a selective breeding program to breed for resistant mites. The other thing is also you start getting residues build up. I was talking to a major honey packer yesterday who says, I was asking about the residue of Amatraz. He said, oh yeah, the last 3 or 4 years, the residue levels are getting up. They're not quite to the maximum residue level yet, but we start ranking for the doses. That could happen. It would not happen with the tide release formulation, but with the other ones. Also, he said, please mention the beekeepers that tylosin levels are pushing the limit from a lot of beekeepers. So beekeepers who are putting tylosin in syrup in the spring, you are having loads rejected right now. Be careful with the tylosin. It has a long residual. So there are other options. I'll let you read those really quickly. I'll go through these. I'm right in your way. You should just move. Great. Okay. Okay, so we could get serious about breeding for mite-resistant or virus-tolerant bees. I'll return to that at the end of this show. If you just start with bees that are fairly resistant, it makes beekeeping and mite control much easier. So we go up to the 8,400 mites. I'm just going to reduce the mite reproduction rate from bee resistance by 10%. Just cut it down by 10%. It drops your ending mites from 8,400 to 1,600. Makes mite control so much easier if you just start with a stock that reduces mite reduction slightly. And there are people who've been working on this for quite a while, Tom Rinder and I can't remember his name right now. I visited them out in Georgia, working with the Russian program, the VSH program. And there's a huge pool of genetics out there just waiting for us. This is the genetics of our managed bees. This is the genetic diversity of the feral stocks out in the United States. It's a huge pool of genetic diversity of bees that have been living for hundreds of years with no help at all. And I suggest we start incorporating those into our breeding populations. But it's not going to work until we get major buy-in from industry. So I'm thinking, as long as tactic was cheap, there's no chance of industry shifting to resistant bees. If tactic fails, there's more chance of this actually happening. Okay, so what you can do, you can start clean in the spring. Start with packages, start with nukes. Now, if you start with package bees, you're not only buying bees, you're actually buying mites. And the mite infestation rate per 100 bees, and this is not uncommon for East Coast packages. I don't see it as much in the West Coast packages. This is your best bargain. You're only paying 20 cents a mite if you're buying at that rate. Now, so let's just say, let's put those numbers in here. Say you start in the beginning of spring with 500 mites in your package. Mite levels aren't that high. You're below the threshold, 1,000 by the end of the season. You don't do anything, they'd be okay. But you start with 250 mites or 500 mites, you are sky high on mites. So your starting mite population is critical. What you can do is when you start with a package or a nuke, stick an apibar strip in on starting day, or do an oxalic acid dribble at that time, and then you start with a very, very low mite level. You get off to a good start. We've been also experimenting with using a strong formic blast to just take all the mites out of a colony. We were very successful this late summer, and I'm going to incorporate this the next spring after ammonits to just blast our hives when they can recover quickly. We knock off the queens anyway, start them off clean, and that will, I hope, make mite management much easier for us. We make a ton of splits. For the first year, we sold out this morning for splits for next year already, for nukes. Last year, the first year, I sold out at all, and that was not until February. This year, I'm sold out now in November. So the demand for nukes is huge. We make a lot of nukes. What we do is we hit them with oxalic acid on day 19 after you make them up. This is all published on my website, how to do it. We love this method. It knocks your mite levels down to almost nothing in your nukes. And I think we may even start doing a shot of oxalic at makeup and then at 19 days and really start with clean bees this year. Timing-wise, if you got a warm winter, mites are going to be a bigger problem because you have a longer build-up season. If you got a cold winter, it won't be a problem. So you know, starting your season, whether mites are going to be much of a problem. These are deviations for California, cold and warm winter. So look at your winters. The second thing is that mites reproduce at a much higher rate when there's drone brood present. So get your mites down early in the season before they hit that high reproductive rate in the drone brood. Then monitor regularly. Okay, now if you do monitoring, either mite washes or sticky boards, understand those numbers are all relative to how much brood is present. If there's not much brood, all the mites are going to be phoretic. If there's a lot of brood, maybe half to 2/3 of the mites are going to be within the brood. So you have to account for that when you do any kind of mite monitoring. Our favorite method is the alcohol wash. You can take the samples. You don't have to go into brood nest. You don't have to disturb the queen in the brood nest. Take them from any frame in the brood chamber, the 2 brood chambers. If you take them up from honey frames of brood chambers, you get about 80% as many mites per bee as you do if you take it from the same hive in the middle. And as Elena was saying yesterday, when you shake them into the tub, all the old bees fly out and you're back to a sample of nurse bees. So you don't have to disrupt the brood nest to get that sample of nurse bees, which have the highest mite levels. Scoop out a half cup of bees, level it off with your finger. They don't sting. Swirl them off and count them. What we're using now is a homemade shaker that will shake a number, they shake 6 at a time, and it's on the back tailgate of my truck. We just got this going a couple months ago, and it revolutionized our mite washing. It takes us 1.5 minutes a colony to go into a yard and take mite samples. We can do a whole yard of 24 hives in about 35 to 40 minutes, and we are out of the yard with a mite level on every single colony. So to set up a large trial this spring, or this summer, in September, we might wash 200 plus hives to find enough with high mite levels. And this is the histogram of the distribution of mites in our colonies. I'm going to go to the next slide. What we found of those 200 colonies, and these have been treated with a Thymol a couple of times during the season, started from clean nukes, that 75% of our hives really didn't have a mite problem. Even the most minimal treatment, a 50% efficacy treatment, would have taken care of them. This is mid-September, okay? 25% of our hives contained 75% of our entire mite population. 25% of the hives contain 75% of mite population. So where do we redirect our efforts? We don't need to put efforts into the 75% of our colonies. We have to put the efforts into these, because the diffusion by drift and robbing from those repopulates, moves those, a proportion of 75% into your low mite colonies. So what we did is we just went back to those yards, we marked them with numbers, picked up all the high mite ones, put them all in one yard. Now, all those yards were nothing but low mite colonies, and we dealt with the high mite ones in one yard. We ran a trial, which I'll show you later, a treatment trial. This is something that Dennis Van Engeldorf and Marlis Vivek have changed their tune this year. Dennis has found that in his surveys, 60% of recreational beekeepers consider themselves treatment-free. Okay, idealism is great, but it doesn't work. It ruins the herd immunity, and they just repopulate everybody else's mites, so it makes it hard for everyone. Oh, I need to dismiss something. How do I do that? Okay. I'm supposed to speak. Yeah. The new operating system tells me everything I need to know.
And more. Yeah.
And more. Oh,
And more.
oh, you don't want to look at my calendar when we get sick. Oh, come on. I don't need these delays because Alan's going to kick me off here soon. Okay. Okay, so you have some options right here. I'll give you 2 seconds to read that. Okay, understand there's limitations for each treatment. Whether you can use it with honey on or honey off, whether you can use it at high temperature or low temperature, whether you can use it with brood present or brood not present, this is all on my website. You can look at that there. Understand also, if we have a season like this season during the summer, in August, September, when there's no pollen and the bees are nutritionally stressed, they don't handle hard mite treatments very well at all. It's really tough for them. Better off, they handle it better if they have good nutrition. If you're using Apigard gel, the Thymol, or using formic acid, they're really tough to use over 90 degrees. You can do it, but they're much more problematic. All these treatments most treatments other than formic, all treatments other than formic, don't hit the mites in the brood. So let's take a look here. 8,400 mites, do one treatment, 90% kill right here, you're down to 5,400. You'd have to do a whole bunch of 90% kills of ferritic mites every single week to get down to that number. You're not going to put one treatment in that's going to give you much efficacy if it's only hitting the ferritic mites. If there's much brood present, it's going to be hard because most of the mites are going to be, or half or more of the mites will be in the brood. So look for treatment windows. In Italy, the beekeepers, where most of the miticides are failing now, are caging their queens during the summer to create an induced brood break, and then they get in with oxalic acid or something and get very good mite control. Okay, hot guard, promising. We've been unhappy with it. I think that they need to keep working on it. Here's what works for us. We use the Thymol and the essential oils. The Thymol and the organic acids. I made a mistake earlier this morning on that. Different forms of Thymol. I tested several of them. I use those 75 highest mite colonies this summer in September to treat these five treatments in a control group. 2 treatments, 10 days apart, daily highs between 80 and 85 degrees every day. Results, controls, of course, went way up. Apigard, applied per manufacturer's instructions. On the top with a 1.5-inch rim, we got 99% efficacy. Really happy. Queens, no queen problems. The brood looked really good. The colonies were recovering really well. The other ones all worked, but that one worked the best, much to my surprise, because that's not the way that I have used it for many years. I'll publish all that. Organic acids, oxalic doesn't vaporize unless you heat it up, and formic does vaporize and penetrates the cavities. Oxalic, this is oxalis plant. It's most effectively applied as a fall or early winter dribble directly over the bees. Costs about $0.05 a colony. It takes you about between 10 and 20 seconds a colony. It's really, really fast, really easy. We love this. We've done this forever. There's also a possible benefit. This is, I don't know if it's even published yet, coming from Mariano Ace's lab. They found out after an oxalic acid dribble, it decreases the prevalence of Nosema ceranae that goes down in both the young bees and in the old bees, goes down substantially. So maybe one of the reasons I don't have a problem with Nosema ceranae anymore in my operations is because we're hitting with oxalic every fall. We may have been treating for Nosema and not even knowing it. You can use oxalic dribble in the summer but you're only good if you do it 3 times a week apart. You only get about a 50% reduction in overall mite levels. Everybody's loving, everybody is on this oxalic vaporization now. I'm not interested. I breathe oxalic vapor. I don't want to do it again. You have to wear a respirator, but the beauty is, oh man, you don't have to go into the hive. The thing is, it only gives you the knockdown, short-term knockdown of the ferretic mites. It doesn't, you have to do it a number of times to get the mite levels down. So a few beekeepers who were dependent upon this summer called me up and they've lost whole yards of bees. They're going to let you read that stuff. Okay, formic acid. I think we're going to be moving a lot more to formic acid. If we look to the future, which is Germany, which is our crystal ball of where we're going, because they've had it for a little longer, they're really big on formic acid. It's the only thing that gets into the brood and actually kills the mites in the brood. You can kill 90+% of the mites in the brood with a strong formic. Here's the difference. Here's a 90% kill of ferretic mites right here. Here's 90% kill in the ferretic mites and the mites in the brood. Instead of winding with 5,400 mites, you're down to 1,100 mites because you've penetrated the capping. So formic has this beautiful advantage. Wait till I'm done, okay, Kirk? So I want to put a plug in for you, actually. It gives colonies a fresh start. After formic treatment, they come back with the most beautiful brood you've ever seen. We use 2 bio quick strips. If you're over 90 degrees, it's touchy. We lose about 2% of the queens. You can put them on with the honey on. We typically use a one strip while the honey's on. Just tip the honey supers and the top brood chamber back, throw 1 strip in there. We get about a 50% efficacy from that, depending on how much brood there is in there. And we rarely get any queen loss. We need to work on other methods. I'm experimenting with other ones. I've got experiments going on now looking at better ways to apply formic. All right, I'm going to make it. I don't know if you got one. Okay, it's much better to get mite levels down, or easier, and keep them down than just to allow them to grow and then try to bring them down. To bring down a high level, you get a high efficacy treatment. To keep them down, a bunch of low efficacy treatments will keep your mite levels down quite low. If you use low efficacy treatments, you're not doing the selective breeding pressure to get resistant mites. Read this one right here. This is key. When we all use the same miticide, time after time, throughout the course of the season, year after year, you are now a mite breeder, and you're breeding for the most resistant mites every time you do it. We've got to shift to rotating treatments. We can extend the life of amatraz for a long time if we simply only used it once a year and use other treatments in the rest of the time. This is a huge, I want to really get this point across. Start rotating treatments. Okay, here's some reality numbers. I put this up early this morning for my operation. I raised it up to, we start in a nuke with about 400 mites, as best I can tell, based upon our alcohol washes. We do an oxalic dribble early in the spring. We typically do a single quick strip while the honey supers are on. And then we'll either do, we've been doing formic or thymol treatments in the brood nest. We're going to change this to a 3-week top treatment instead. And then we do an oxalic acid dribble way back here. We're back down to a very low mite level going into the winter. This is our reality numbers of what's happened. We haven't used a synthetic miticide in 14 years. So this is kind of what we do here. So just showing you it is possible. Now, I have a different idea about bee research. Instead of putting out proposals, asking researchers to say, hey, I want to do this, I think that research committee should say, hey, we need this done, and then shop it out. It apparently doesn't fly very well with the California State Beekeepers because I got kicked off the research board this year. So I'm going to ask you guys to stand in for me. Maybe your voice is there. Okay. It's not necessary to kill a single mite to completely control varroa. If you drop the reproductive rate down even by 10%, varroa is no longer a problem. Okay? Certain botanicals and other biopesticides have huge potential. And Alina, are you in here? Okay, she's been testing out a few. She's going to test out more. I strongly support Alina's research to look at these botanicals and biopesticides. The next one, this is a brand new article out, where they found that, and this is some research that I put some of donations to scientific beekeeping to a few years ago. It's came to fruition. They found out that in colonies that are surviving with high mite levels, they have a benign form of deforming virus. And if you get the infection of the benign form to start with, it excludes the virulent form from growing in those colonies. And this has huge implications. Conceivably, if we can get this benign form of deforming virus, and because deformed wing is vertically transmitted in every egg from the queens, if we could just get this, inoculate the cell builder colonies of our breeders, we could ship deforming virus resistant bees across the United States and change the virus population across the whole country in a year or two. Huge stuff. So I have a research proposal in. I asked Alina if she would run it at UC Davis. We wrote it up just last week. Tonight it's on the table. If you want to go to the research meeting, put some support in for this if you think this is a good idea. I think it's an incredible idea. Second thing, a paper came out recently finding that different strains of BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, some of them kill 100% of varroa mites. And when you test them on bee larvae and bee adult bees, it doesn't hurt them at all. I said, my God, we got to follow up this. So I thought, what researcher would be good at doing this? I called up Kirk right here. He said he'd be willing to do it. We wrote up a proposal last week, and that will be on the table tonight for funding. So if you think this is a good idea, which I think would be incredible, tell your representatives for California State Beekeepers to support this. And everybody says, oh, we can't change. We can use a tactic, we can't change. And this is what I see. Everything's impossible until you just do it.